All right, we're recording on let's see here. Add a description here. How's it going? Let's see. Charlie, how are you?
Morning, morning, Coach Jeff, or evening your side. How are you doing?
Doing so good. So far, so good. We're getting ready to get started. We're at 7:59. I'm gonna go live on Facebook.
100%.
So,
YouTube.
well, no. We're streaming into YouTube, and that is happening already. And we're recording right now on the Zoom side, but I'm just going to go ahead and get a Facebook Live going too. Why not?
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, so that's done, and we're going to go ahead and start the live. All right, looks like, all right, we're going live now on Facebook. We are live streaming into YouTube, and we are live on the Zoom side. It's 8 o'clock straight up, 8 p.m. on the Pacific Standard Time, and we are in for another installment of Get a Clue in 52. I'm showing it to like all of the cameras that I'm speaking to. On the Zoom side, joining me live, Charlie and Patty, thank you always for coming on board. Thank you for supporting the book and the weekly Zooms that we do. I appreciate that. James, I see you on the Facebook side, and people are going to start rolling in. So, hello, it's Sunday night. We're feeling all right. And what we're doing with Get a Clue in 52 is we're reading one tip every single week from my book. This is the second edition. This is the second year that we're doing this. The first edition of Get a Clue in 52 is what we covered last year. Every single week last year in 2020, we came on Sunday night, we Zoomed, and then we live streamed into the Facebook group, Get a Clue in 52. And now we're streaming live into my YouTube channel, Watch Get a Clue. Every week this year, we're doing it all over again, but we're doing it out of the second edition of the book. So by now, you may know that the book has 5 sections. They're depicted on the new cover: communication, marketing, networking, sales, and accountability, I believe, is the order that this year's edition goes in. And tonight we're tip number 4 overall for the year. Tip number 4 out of the communication section. That's what we're starting with. And it's fun to do this. It's a lot of fun. I hope we see some more people coming on live on the Facebook side. But I also want you to know that you can join me live on Zoom just by going to tinyurl.com/get a clue. All right. So one of the things I recall, Patty, you didn't remind me about this last week, but I started reading the dedications all over again. And last week I didn't read an entry from the dedication section. So I want to start there. We've had an interesting, it's been an interesting week. The inauguration took place and a lot of stuff going on. We lost Larry King. Those of us in the personal professional growth community lost Frank Shakewitz. That's on the sad side. On the positive side, I was surprised to get out of nowhere. I was notified that I'm one of the top 20 coaches in San Diego, and that just came out of the blue, but it was a pleasant surprise. And when I posted and shared that, I got a lot of good feedback and reaction around that. So I'm filled with gratitude. And heading into this week, I was realizing that, yeah, you know what? I need to really, really, really pay attention to the dedications because dedication it's a form of gratitude. And that's where we want to start off with. So that's what I'm going to do before I read tip number 4 tonight. I'm going to start and get back into gratitude. In week number 1 of this year, tip number 1, I read the entry for Mary Ann, and then I read the entry for Abigail. So last week, it's ironic. I don't know why I skipped it last week, didn't think about it, but sure enough, it's to Mom. And for those of you that know me, know my parents both passed away last September. It's still pretty raw, although, I'm getting past the dark side of dealing with all of that. And I had to edit what I wrote to my mom when I first came out with the book. I self-published this in 2019. And last year when I read the dedication to her, she was still with us, and now she's not. So let's go ahead and start there. To Mom, I'm so glad I published the first edition while you were with us. In this second edition, I'm equally dedicated to making you proud. Rest peacefully with Dad, and thank you for everything. All right, so there we go. That's last week's, and then this week I want to send dedication. This is a new entry that wasn't in the first edition of the book, but my Aunt Sue was just instrumental in helping me get through the passing of my parents, and I want to read to her. Her copy of the book is like on its way any day. I don't even know if she knows she's getting one. But anyway, it reads as follows: to Sue, the months preceding the second edition of this book, Armand said, "Do not know how I would have gotten through without you. The most patient, loving, compassionate, diplomatic, and healer of a listener I have ever known. It's you." So, Auntie Sue, if you end up seeing this or watching a recording, whatever the case may be, I just want you to know that you're in here. You're close to my heart. And this second edition is in part dedicated to you as well. Now, a review of what we've covered so far in the communication section. That's the section that we're starting with this year. Last year, it was the fourth section that we covered. So this year, the communication section is right up front. In going through it last year, it dawned on me, you know what? A better ordering of the categories, a better ordering of the tips would be to start the whole thing with communication and then see how the chips fall from there. And so the first tip that we read the first week of January was checking baggage. Tip number 1, checking baggage. That's my metaphor for we all bring things, there's 3 bags that we all bring to communication: culture, heredity, and all of our personal past experience. So we understand our own and other people's bags, we start to get better at the communication game, encoding and decoding and so forth. Next, tip number 2 was to invite all of your senses to the listening party. People confuse hearing with listening. I'm here to tell you that listening is a psychological process. Hearing is just physiological. And we can invite all of our senses because we can we can pay attention to anything that we observe. So whether we taste, touch, smell, see, etc., I invite you to invite all of your senses to the listening party, especially so you can understand the difference between hearing and listening, and people confuse those very often. All right. Tip number 3, which was last week, was overcome these and you'll overcome a lot. What are these? These are 5 barriers to critical thinking. And we could have done a different tip for each of the 5 because it's heavy content when we talk about subjectivity versus objectivity. And we talk about the difference between critically thinking, accepting information on face value versus asking the question. There's so many different ways we can ask questions through testing, analysis, comparison, demonstration, measurement, verification, scientific method, etc. But if critical thinking is thinking outside of the box, then what's the box? The box is unquestioned information. And there are 5 things that prevent all of us from questioning information that we receive. It's self-interest, it's frozen evaluations, it's stereotypes, ego defense, and ethnocentrism. And we went into a little bit of detail on those, although we could go a lot further on any of those. But that brings us to tonight in tip number 4 from the communication section. Again, we're at 8:07 p.m. Pacific time. We're reading from Get a Klu in 52. Tonight is tip number 4. So there's only 48 tips left after tonight. Isn't it amazing how quickly January has flown by? Right? Little seed plant there, little for flyby coaching. Thank you for the smile, Charlie. Picking up on every word. All right. So are we ready to go? Have we set the table word for word? Are you guys ready to go? Tip number 4. And it is as follows. Here we go. Page 23 from Get a Klu in 52. Tip number 4. Replace statements with questions. Better yet, become a master at asking questions. Did you know that a human brain, once hearing a question, will always attempt to answer it? That's powerful because it means that questions are among the most commanding in a category of communication techniques called attention getters. Simply put, when you have someone's attention, communication is easier. Another benefit to asking questions is what a wonderful choice they are in replacing statements. A fair amount of bad communication occurs when people make assumptions about things. Asking questions to show curiosity, humility, or even ignorance is sometimes more productive than erroneously forwarding an incorrect or offensive assumption. Said another way, statements are about what I think, but a question is about what others think. It is absolutely critical in communication that you are more interested in what others have to say than what you have to say yourself. Let others be interested in what you have to say, but I propose that it is in our best interest to be more interested in what others have to say. Again, it is their job to be interested in what we have to say. If you read my tips on, if you read my tips on networking, and I'll pause here, you would have to go forward in the book at this point to have read them if all you had was the second edition. Of course, if you had the first edition of the book, you would have already read those tips by now. But anyway, I'm going back to word for word right now. Is that a little fun, Patty? All right, I see you smiling there. Charlie. All right. Those that are really familiar with the first edition of the book know exactly what I'm going through in the second edition. Okay, here we go. Back to page 23 at the bottom. If you read my tips on networking, if you read my tips on networking, you're aware of the questions I have already prepared that I know I'm going to ask people at networking events, knowing that after the fourth or fifth question, my interest in them has gotten them interested in me. And then they start asking about me. It gets better because now I know which things about myself to share because I've already learned so much about the other person. So instead of sharing something about myself, hoping they are interested, I can share what I'm fairly certain they will engage with because I've taken the time to get to know them first by asking questions. We already know that listening is the most important of all the communication skills. So being great at asking questions means you'll have more to listen to. Again, what you choose to say and share with others will be calibrated and guided with what you have already learned about them. You'll seem more on point, efficient, or somehow intelligent as a communicator. In my coaching practice, there is no greater tool at my disposal, nothing more responsible for my success with my clients than my ability to ask more questions. Questions that clarify, questions that probe, questions that mirror, questions that intervene, questions that cheerlead, questions that condition, questions that confront, questions that guide, questions that question, and so on. If you have experienced coaching with me or perhaps seen me speak because I'm always questioning my audience, you know the power my questions have to focus your attention on the truth, the strategy, the action required, the reporting, the reasons, the barriers, the willpower, the discipline, the purpose, the goals, the milestone, the peer group, the results. In tip number 6, we'll talk about eye contact being the most powerful form of nonverbal communication. And I'll end this tip suggesting that questions are the most powerful form of verbal communication. All right. Woohoo! If I might say so myself, I think I read that with a little more fluidity, a little more, I don't know, pizzazz. That was fun, right? That seemed to roll right off my tongue. I hope you enjoyed it. Watching at home, if you're following on the Facebook Live that we're doing. Hello to James and Nancy that I've seen have joined on. I hope I'm seeing everybody that scrolls through. And of course, Charlie, Patty, you're with me here live on the Zoom side. So let me put that out there one more time. If you want to come on into the Zoom and join Patty and Charlie and I and have some group conversation around the tip I just read, just go to www.tinyurl.com/getaklu, GETAKLU. Otherwise, we are live streaming into the YouTube channel. Watch Get a Clue. Consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. Watch Get a Clue. And then, of course, we're making a recording here live on the Zoom side. And it's time to ask you guys to open up your microphones and whatever questions you may have. I remember I did this last time. I was on the headset and then I went off the headset. So maybe your questions will come through. So bear with me while I do that again. Let me go ahead and try to get your audio coming through. Testing 1, 2. Can you guys open up your mic and see if I can hear you guys?
Hi.
1 2 1 2 1 2.
Okay, very good. I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. All right. So for those of you that are following on the Facebook side, if you hear the voices coming through, it's Charlie Monson, the Global Connector, all the way from South Africa. And it is Patty Blakesley, the Inner Business Coach, hailing from Chicago, Illinois. And welcome, you guys. Thanks again for joining me on another installment of Get a Clue in 52. This is tip number 4 this year, but guess what? It's tip number 56 consecutive weeks we've been doing this now. Isn't that great? So you were with me last time I did this. You're with me now. And Amy Taylor is watching. Bring them on camera. Maybe, I wonder, how do I do that? Let's see if that can happen. Uh-oh, I don't want to lose anybody. But right now with me, Charlie, Patty, do you guys have anything that you want to comment on, question, add to what we've done as far as reading tip number 4 is concerned? This tip about questions, it comes up a lot in the book. At least 3 specific times, the power of questions comes up. So what do we have to say in this instance?
Well, it reminds me of seek first to understand rather than to be understood. So it's a great way to try to understand someone else is to ask them questions instead of making any assumptions or carrying baggage into the conversation, right?
Well, we always going to carry it for, well, yes, 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 yes. So there's a lot to agree with there. Yeah. Number one, though, we're always going to carry baggage. It's
True.
just our awareness of our baggage and our awareness or anticipation of other people's baggage might help us encode and decode more effectively. Two, yeah, didn't that, I like went out of my way, I think, to make that point twice, that if I'm asking questions first, by the time I speak, my speaking is calibrated, right? It's one thing to learn from Dr. Stephen Covey, who taught us in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People to seek first to understand and then to be understood, right? It makes sense, right? Just to be selfless and to be polite, or to have etiquette, or to, on that level. But I want to go past, do you understand, like the very first surface understanding, at least for me, maybe you'll tell me if you guys disagree, but when I hear that and I read that and I studied that, I'm like, well, it just makes sense. You'll show up as a more diplomatic person. You'll show up as a more selfless person. You'll show up as having more etiquette. You'll show up as being more, but all of those adjectives are on the value of, are on the level of ethics or morals, right? Or behavioral standards or social grace. Okay. Does that make sense? What I want to do is go deeper, a little bit deeper. When I go deeper, I go Kluba diving, right? You guys know that. I want to go a little bit deeper beyond just social grace. Like, hey, wasn't that a gentleman? Or wasn't that an elegant lady? Wasn't she so curious? Like, wasn't bragging about herself, wasn't dominating the conversation, wasn't talking about themselves all day. Don't you want to be more like that? Beyond that, the social grace of it all.
Yeah.
Deeper to strategic.
Well, I was thinking understanding somebody's values and what they're really, for me, passionate about. I can find that by asking questions.
Yeah. So yes. That's what I mean by strategic. Okay. I'm gonna, like, in other words, I pair. It wasn't just seek first to understand, then to be understood, but I'm pairing it with last week's tip, the power of listening. Right? We'll have more to listen to if we ask better questions, right? And then a third level of strategy becomes, well, by the time I start talking, right? So there's some people that they network their way around and they talk. They lead with talking. So one level for them is, hey, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So ask questions, you'll have more stuff to listen to, and listening is what's really going to get you far rather than talking. I heard a quote, I think it was a Larry King quote. Larry King passed away yesterday, right? And I think one of his quotes said, I've never learned a thing in my life from speaking or from talking. I've only learned when I've listened, and I endeavor to listen every day, right? I think that was one of his quotes. So you get from, like, hey, first of all, just stop talking all the time. Second of all, ask good questions. You'll have more to listen to, and listening is where you really get the gem. But then now to somebody that's trying to grow their business, somebody that's in a networking environment, right? Somebody that's a connector, somebody that's a relationship builder, somebody that's like, when we're endeavoring to do business, we go from just talking to listening to asking questions so we can listen more. So now when it's time for us to talk, we actually come off sounding smarter, because I've learned so much by listening that I know now there might have been stuff that I said at this stage that now I know I don't need to say because it wouldn't be relevant because of the listening that I've done. Right? That's what I'm getting. We're going deep. Past just being a good person or selfless or diplomatic or socially graceful or, conversant with etiquette. We're getting to, like, strategic, right? Like, before I open my mouth, I want to know what's going on here. It's for somebody that's really trying to grow their business, grow their network, grow their sphere of relationships, grow their sphere of influence. It's beyond ethics or morals or etiquette. It's strategic so that's why later on in the book we ask, we practice the authoring of questions ahead of time, so that when we get into situations, we're armed with tons and tons and tons of questions we can ask that will give us really good information. So then we're speaking more efficiently and we're speaking to what people really care about. So all of that's baked in there. And yeah, definitely influenced by Covey. You're 100% accurate to bring that up, Patty. Thank you. Thank you so much. What else, you guys? What else? Get a clue in 52, tip number 4. We're talking about questions, power of questions. What else?
I asked Charlie a lot of questions this morning on his call with me.
You guys had a call together? Lots of questions going back and forth? Hang on a second. Something's coming in on the Facebook side. Let me see if I can handle this. Amy Taylor says, being in the hair industry, it is extremely important to go in depth with questions at the start of the session, but then through the session to keep our guest feeling special. Well, you know, Amy, you're not on live with us. I would love for you to be. Thank you for that offering. I have so much, I don't know, it's a combination of curiosity and admiration for the chair. What a special place the chair is. And I wonder, I don't know if you're hearing me now speak to you specifically. Did you guys hear Amy's comment? So it's like what's the difference between like a confessional at a church and like the chair? What's the difference between a coaching session or the couch and the chair? I just imagine that people, when you have enough rapport, when they know you, like you, trust you with their hair, they trust you with their life, right? So, and this is a sensitive subject for me when we talk about hair. So God bless you, Amy, and the amount of conversations, the amount of information that people trust you with. Oh my goodness. I only have an imagination for that. If you have any comments or if, you know, emojis that verify that, you know, it's worth imagining, like the things that people probably share things with you that they don't share with their spouses, don't share with their friends, etc. And that's, you know, that's one of the reasons I'm enamored with what it must be like to be in that industry, because coaching is very similar. It's a special relationship. Amy says, are you ready? She says, I'm in all parts of their lives. Wow. Well, I've always wondered what it would be like to have like a coaching hair salon where people, like, you know, instead of just like dumping all of their problems, they actually get moved in the direction of doing something about it. But I bet in your case, it's enough for them just to feel good, just to be heard, just to be understood, just to be able to let it fly without judgment or without having to look over their shoulders. I have a lot of respect for the chair, the space that is created in the chair, and a good hairstylist is so much more than a hairstylist, aren't you? That's what I'm imagining. So hats off to you, and thank you for being here with us tonight. Feel free anytime to come on the Zoom side. You don't even have to open up your camera. You know, as long as we can hear you, we can dialogue in real time. It's tinyurl.com/get a clue. But we're talking about Get a Clue in 52. Tonight is tip number 4 overall for the year, and number 4 in the communication section, where we're talking about the power of questions and how they're not only like it's better etiquette, but it's also strategic. And then what a better option than statements. All right. You know, Patty, you were mentioning that towards the end of your comment. Did you want to elaborate on that at all? Like, because that's in here in the book, and you seem to pick up on that and mention it. Questions as a better choice than statements. Did you want to elaborate on that one at all, or do you have anything else you want to add before I invite Charlie to open up the mic?
Not really. Go for it, Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie, you got anything for us tonight? Usually, you've got something up your sleeve.
Good evening again to you, Coach Jeff and Patty.
Yes, sir.
This just reminds me of tip number 4 last year. Was actually, it's like got goosebumps, and I'm kind of, you know, the memory is just hitting me right now. Just looking back at my notes from last year, and it's so tied in and synchronized with your dedication to your mum. And I think it was the previous day that your dad had passed on. That was the session. It was not tip number 4 of the year overall, but tip number 4 when tip number 4 of communication.
Oh yeah. So what you're saying, Charlie, is that when we were going through this section of the book, this tip last year, it was in September when my father had just passed, and I didn't know my mom was going to go 3 weeks later. It was in that time in September.
It's exactly the day. 4 months ago, would it be? Yeah, it would be 4 months ago.
Well,
that was September the 7th,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, on your side. Yeah, my dad passed on September 6th, 5th, 6th, 5th, and then my mom went on
5,
the
6 round about there, yeah.
My dad went on the 5th, my mom went on the 26th. Yeah.
So that brought me,
You know,
may their souls rest in peace. And yeah. We touched on a couple of things, and just to get back to where Patty was, we had a call yesterday, and we had quite a few questions that were asked back and forth, and what the situation was, because I've actually I flew an idea past her as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we came down to the smarter goals, etc., and where it's tying in. So I've gone to evaluate and revise my goal.
Yeah.
So
good.
And my objective as well, and what do I want to serve. I've gone and just given it a bit of evaluation as to what is happening, what is causing all the delay and so forth, and what if I revised it and brought it over and do exactly the same thing, just stay on the same course, but change the route.
Yeah, well, independent of where you're going, is it fair to say that Patty was asking questions that you weren't able to ask yourself? A different voice, somebody outside, right? Because one of the
exactly. Mm-hmm. So this is the thing where, even though you might be asking questions to get clarity of the other person, you can ask one question that will lead up to you being asked questions, and as you put it, that you could not ask yourself, and really get deeper down into what it is that you want to get clarity on, especially within the coaching space. A bouncing board, someone you can pop into and says, listen, I got this idea. Then they'll blast you with a whole lot of questions that give you a little bit more clarity. So one question might lead up to you being asked 1,000 questions. Just listen to that one question. Again, it comes to, it's not the amount of questions that you ask, it's the quality of the question that you ask. And as you've so rightly pointed, yes, continue.
Well, I just think that's something that we could talk about for a while. Be really quickly, I want to acknowledge Zachary, who I've seen has come on board. Hello, Zachary. And if you have any comments or questions, let me know. We're doing Get a Clue in 52. We've read tip number 4, which is ask questions, become a master at asking questions. I'm on the Zoom side here. I've got some people live with me on Zoom. Thank you for showing up on the Facebook side. Charlie was just commenting on the power of questions as he's experienced it quite recently. And your last comment was, it's not the amount of questions, it's the quality of the questions. I can tell you that nothing has sharpened the quality of my questions more than understanding and learning how to coach, and then all my years of experience as a coach. And I wish that I don't have this. I'll be honest with you. I think I've got a lot of good content, a lot of good strategy. I think I'm a person that walks around believing I can help anybody with anything. Get them to a strategy, or I know a strategy. Yet, if you ask me, Jeff, how do you come up with better quality questions? Right now, I don't know. It's just something I do, right? You've heard me ask questions. I've embedded several into, right? And I don't have it. Well, here are the 5 things that you do to come up with really good questions. But if I sat down and I allowed myself to answer that question, I might come up with a really good module, right? I might come up with something really, really good module. As a matter of fact, something that we can come up with together. How do you get better at asking questions? You don't have to answer that now, but I think it's a noble endeavor for everybody, because we're talking tonight about the power of our questions becomes the quality of our questions becomes the quality of our experiences. And Tony Robbins said the quality of our emotions is the quality of our life, right? Yeah. So, and also shout out, heads off to a colleague, Martin Lopez. I don't see that he's here with us tonight, but hopefully he chimes in, catches a glimpse of this. He runs a program that he does all the time called the Curiosity Theory. And, his entire brand is about curiosity and what comes of curiosity, the value of curiosity. So my hats are off to Martin Lopez real quick. Hopefully you're watching out there somewhere, Martin. Charlie, go ahead, continue.
You just now with the model that you spoke about, you actually had touched on it in the networking session, right? If you attend a networking session, you've got to, number one, also realize why are you attending that session?
Yep.
What is your goal? Who do you want to meet? Who are you going to be speaking to? What's the industry? What can you offer to that industry? And as a networker, that is where I frame my questions around. Who is it? If I don't ask the right questions, I will not know who would be the suitable person to connect you to.
Yeah.
Right? So, what is it, the normal, what is it that you do becomes like kind of stale. Everyone's asking and people go like, and what do you do?
Well, that's true. There's organizations, by the way, that are out there that prohibit the asking of that question because it's right. But you can get around it. You say, so how do you serve the world? So
what brings you here? What wakes you in the morning?
Haven't you seen people do that? What's the genius you share with people? How do you help the world? And then they always, everybody's trained to do this already. So how can I help you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, the thing is how, again, we will probably get into it at a later stage, is being schooled, knowledgeable about it, is when you speak to somebody who knows exactly why you're asking them in their trade. So it is like more like a parry. I just back down and says, okay, what is it that you want to know, right? And give you an opportunity to ask the questions. Again, the listening part comes in now. Where are you at? Now I then get to frame my questions around the questions you have been asking. It's all just a parry thing, right? And what are your thoughts on that one? Well, like if I had to ask Jeff some questions, Coach Jeff would want to know more about me and asking me questions, right? So I'll be sitting and listening to what type of questions Coach Jeff is asking me, and I'll answer his questions, but then I will then now reframe my questions because of listening to his questions more than answering them. What type of questions? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what you're asking, but I can restate what I think you're saying.
Yeah.
Are you stating or asking?
It's both, right?
Okay. Well, here's what I hear you saying. Here's what I hear you saying, is that being asked questions actually is, on surface, it seems like you're the one that has to give information if you're asked the question. But the truth is you're actually receiving information because there's information in each question.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever somebody wants to ask me, that informs me what's on their mind.
Exactly.
And but it's time for me to start asking questions. My question is going to be calibrated or informed or reshaped by what 100%. I saw that they were interested or what they were curious about. So to restate, the restate part of what I'm hearing you say is, even when we are being asked questions, we are still being given information. This is what people are curious about. Now, the second part, are you asking me something? That's what I'm not hearing.
The ask was, is it actually where you tactfully are paying more attention to listening? And then, as you rightly mentioned, that's where you could calibrate your questions as well in getting to understand what the person is about and so forth.
Yeah, well, here's what comes to mind if I'm hearing you clearly. In a networking situation, right, pull out the notepad and start taking notes, maybe. A lot of times when we collect business cards, we like to write things on the business card that remind us of the person so that our follow-up has something personal or different right? We talk about that later on. But I can tell you, I like when I invest in one of these every single year of my life, right? So look, here's last year's journal. I can show you, the year. I can show you. Here's 2020. The 2019 is right there, and here's 2021. And I love having something to write with and write on while I'm doing everything that I'm doing, because what I can do is I can make a little note. Something comes into my head, I can make a little note and put it off to the side, a little keyword or a little symbol that will remind me of what that was, and then quickly get back to my listening. Right? Listening is so important. And a lot of times ideas come into my head and I don't always censor myself and I don't always slow down. But when I'm doing my line of work, when I'm doing business work, when I'm coaching, there's a time for me to talk and there's a time for me to listen. And some things will come into my head that I know I'm going to want to say, but not it doesn't necessarily have to be right then and there. There's other times, Patty, I'm sure you've spent so much time on Zooms with me where I don't censor at all. I just go right in and I'll cut somebody off and start talking because I've made the decision that what I have to say right there can't wait. So it's different. You go back and forth, so I'll say this: context determines what is expected, appropriate, and effective. Context determines what is expected, appropriate, and effective when it comes to speaking, listening, question asking, turn taking, superior, equal, inferior posture, all kinds of ways we can analyze any communication. Context is one of the 7 ingredients of communication. And the quickest definition for context as it relates to communication, or as it relates to being an ingredient of communication, is that context determines what is expected, appropriate, and effective. Now, that's not to say that doing what is expected and appropriate will always be most effective, but context determines what's appropriate, expected, and effective. So I don't know if that answers your question. And
yes, absolutely.
Clearly, a coaching session where somebody has paid me to coach them, that's different listening than a networking situation where I'm just getting to know somebody. And then in terms of the give and take and the push and pull of how much am I speaking, how much am I listening, but always err on the side of questions, always err on the side of listening, and everything comes out of your mouth will be a lot smarter, or at
100%.
least. All right, so here we are in Get a Clue in 52. This is week number 4, tip number 4. It's actually, I have to be a little bit honest and tell you that it's week number 56, because we did 52 weeks. We did the whole book, first edition of the book in 2020, and this is the second edition. Can I tell you what I love about the second edition? There's a couple of things. One thing I love about the second edition is that it's got a preview chapter of my next book, my upcoming book, my current project that I'm working on called The Integrity Game. If you are a super accomplished person in any area of life, could be sports, theater, the arts, business, enterprise, speaking, personal professional growth, engineering, I don't care. If you're at the top of your game and you've worked your way up to something super special and you think you've got something to say about integrity, I want to interview you. I'm working on this project, something I'm really happy about. You can get a preview chapter of The Integrity Game when you get a Clue in 52 second edition. And it's a book I'm working on right now. I'm still collecting data, still doing research, but the stage for it is set. And now I've got the 10 different chapters that need development from here. So I'm looking to interview accomplished individuals that have a thing or two to say about integrity, and talk about the power of questions. I've got strong questions for those that I'll be interviewing for The Integrity Game. So reach out to me if you want to be a part of that project, me finishing the book, The Integrity Game. And that's just one of the reasons I'm excited about the second edition of Get a Clue in 52. There's other things that I'm really excited about. It's the branding, I think, is a little bit more consistent with the old Get a Clue brand. I like the fact that the 5 categories are right here on the front. What I really love is that Miss Patty wrote a beautiful draft of what this thing is really about. I only had to make a couple of edits here and there to clean it up, to add my own 2 cents. And Patty is here. I feel so good about having rewarded her for all of her loyalty. I mean, every Sunday night she's here with me live, helping me read about and talk about the tips. So it was a treat to include you in this edition of the book in this way. And I can't wait till when I get to the dedication section and read what I have to say about you and Charlie. It's going to take us 2 weeks before we get there. But that's what we're doing Sunday night. Listen, I'm in my pajamas essentially, right? There's no smoke, no mirrors, no lights, no makeup, no super techno whiz bang production value. It's just me on my laptop, zooming into Zoom and streaming into my YouTube channel. And last week I decided to go live with it as well. And I'm doing that again this week. I might do that every week, go live, because we get a couple more people participating than just the Zoom alone. And Charlie and Patty, thanks again for coming onto the Zoom. Not everybody wants to be seen and open up their camera and get ready and be put on the spot. Some people like to stay kind of one-way communication, and that's pretty cool too. So for those of you that have joined on the Facebook side, I see James, Nancy, Amy, and Zachary, and forgive me if there's anybody that I missed. And Charlie and Patty, thanks for joining me on the Zoom side. For those of you that are watching a recording of this in the future, thank you as well, because you could be doing other things, but you decided there's some value there. And hopefully there was tonight with tip number 4 overall from the communication section. We've got 6 more tips to go before we move on to the second section of the book. So we'll be in communication for a while. Marketing comes next. And this is fun. It's just fun. It's fun to end my weekend this way, which is the beginning of my week. And let me go ahead and throw it out there. Last call. If there's any other comments or questions, any contributions to the content that we've discussed, anything like that for tonight. Patty, your microphone is opened up. What do you got?
Well, I was just reflecting on the concept of permission.
Mm-hmm.
Because there have been times when people have questioned me about things that I don't really think they had my permission to ask me about. And I know we talked about permission, in the networking section last year, I think, and a couple other sections.
Yeah, I'm interested here. I'm kind of like, well, I almost want to, well, give me an example, but how can I do that without you talking about the question that you don't want to talk about?
I can give you an example that's not about me. I was always taught, you never ask someone how big their ranch is.
Mm-hmm.
For example, how many?
Yeah, there's certain things that are taboo. How old are you? How much money do you make? Are you planning on having a family? There's things like this, right?
So it just came up in my brain that when you want to ask questions, once again, you need to have kind of a sense of whether you have permission to ask.
It's interesting because when we've talked about permission in the context of personal and professional growth and the context of coaching and leadership training, and you are a student of the coaching and leadership training, you're a subscriber to monthly group mentoring around that training. So we have this conversation all the time. There may be people watching live or zooming in that aren't familiar with this conversation about permission that we've had. In the context of coaching, let's put it this way. Let's say a communication starts, and at the beginning, one does not know if they do or do not have permission to ask anything, right? Let alone what they do and don't have permission for. This is okay, this is not okay. In a coaching relationship, it's important to seek that permission, right? And that's what we teach and we train. And all the different ways that we seek permission to ask questions, seek permission to confront, seek permission to count, to intervene, in the context of coaching, because that context is where we're trying to get somebody to get something they can't get on their own. We're trying to get somebody to change behavior to get different results. So we know we need to ask questions, and we know we're going to be better off if we get permission. In other contexts, right, like networking or interpersonal relations, or can imagine any other context where you're not hired, paid, expected to get somebody somewhere else, right? And they aren't hired to get you somewhere else, right? And then they ask you something. They probably asked because they think they don't need permission, or they didn't think that they do need permission. Are you with me? And right, so one way or the other, they thought they had it. Does that make sense? Or didn't need it. Okay, so that's where they're coming from, right? And so now it's like, ooh, you don't have my permission to ask that question, but it's interesting there, because do they need it? Or you know what I'm saying? It's like, what's required there, that you go back in time and let them know that they don't have permission so that they never ask it in the first place? What I'm getting at is, how do we handle that? What's the best way to handle that, with statements or questions?
Oh, another question.
Right. So
Like,
so what would it be? And you see where I'm leading you now, right? What would it be? I want to role play this with you, right? Let's say I just, like, ask me a question that you don't have permission to ask me.
what made you think you could ask me that?
Right. Yeah. And so that, even that demonstrates that you're a little offended, right?
Yeah.
And, so knowing you as well as I do, you'd probably even want to peel another layer of the onion and say, what has you curious about that?
The answer, well, actually, the answer that I've often used is not really an answer. It's sort of like, I can't believe you asked me that.
Which isn't a question.
Correct.
Right. So, yeah.
But I could turn that around a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God. Here's a blast from the past. Joni, how are you? Nice to see you. Welcome aboard. We are just almost wrapping up another installment of Get a Clue in 52, where I'm reading one tip from my book, Get a Clue in 52, every Sunday night. And tonight, tip number 4 was ask questions. We're talking about the power of questions. So I'm on Zoom right now with Charlie from South Africa, Patty from Chicago. They join me every week, and you guys are welcome to join me on the Zoom site as well. It's tinyurl.com/getaclue. And we're streaming into my YouTube channel, and we're here live on, oh God, it's so good to see you. Hello, Joni. Nice to see you. So we're just about wrapping up, but back to you, Patty. Yeah, like I would, it's fun, right? I'd say, well, what are some questions that you can have on the ready when somebody asks you a question that, it's like, well, they're violating some ethical line that you have that they don't.
We could always say, could I ask you that first?
If you wanted to know, I think that you might trap yourself into having to answer it at that point. Let's see what Amy says here. Amy chimes in. She says, my guest will lead the conversations with either body language or answers to other questions to how deep I can get on a subject. Yeah, and that's just, by the way, Amy, thank you for that. If you have the book and you go back last week to tip number 2 weeks ago to tip number 2. Tip number 2 in the communication session is to invite all of your senses to the listening party. Listening is something that we do with our mind, not with our ears. We hear with our ears, but we attend to what we hear with our mind. So from that perspective, we can invite all of our senses. So it's a big thumbs up for nonverbal communication. Not, listening. We could listen to what we see. We could listen to what we touch. We could listen to what we smell. We could pay attention to anything we observe. So invite all of your senses to the listening party, and you'll have more cues, more situational cues as to what's appropriate, how deep you can get on the subject, etc. Thank you for that comment and for joining us, Amy and Zach and Joni and Nancy and James. Thank you. For those of you joining us on the Facebook side for an installment of Get a Clue in 52, Charlie and Patty are here with me on the Zoom side. Thank you guys as always. Charlie, what do you got? You opened up the microphone. What do you got?
When it gets to the permission of asking the questions, and as Amy has so rightly pointed out, it is more like, where does the rapport start from? Where did you start building that rapport with the person? And then you get the body language, their attention, the nonverbal communication. Mm-hmm. Then it kind of builds up. And one question that I've learned from you at somewhere in the stage, is there anything or any area that is a no-go area that I should not be touching onto? What is it that you are sensitive about? Where is the question that I shouldn't be asking? So indirectly as asking, what is there that you don't want me to ask you? So
yeah, I still think that that's interesting. I like the intention of that, right? Is like you want to let them know that you're not interested in going any further than they want to go, right? But it's almost like the irony of the question said that way is, will you let me know what I'm not, what you're not comfortable with me asking about? And as soon as they answer that, they've brought up what they don't want you to bring up. So, it will, well, the way that I would do something like that is just say, if I'm communicating an intention to get to know them, like, look, I've got a bunch of questions for you. I'm so interested. I'm so curious. Will you please just raise your hand if I ask something out of line?
Yeah.
I don't like that. That way they don't have to say what's out of line, but I'm letting them know that if I go too far, like, will you please just give me a cue? And I want them to know, trust me to change subjects immediately if I go too far or ask something that's uncomfortable, etc. So,
and that's where you can build it up and get past that one of getting the permission, right? Is as you're building the rapport, as you're getting the rapport, it also gives, asking that question would also give a better level of trust, transparency, where the person would be open to share with you more, knowing that you are not becoming invasive and wanting to just get into it. You are asking permission to do that.
Yeah. So tonight, Patty brought up the notion of permission, and I just want to nip it in the bud before we go down the full rabbit hole about permission, because the tip wasn't about permission, and the concept of permission is something that we talk about in my coaching and leadership training and in the group mentoring that we do when we're working on. If we're talking about permission, to me, it's really only applicable. I mean, as of tonight, right? As far as tonight's concerned, the idea of permission to ask questions, that the context where that's important is coaching or advising or coaching, or like, let's say that you're a life service professional. Let's say that you're a realtor, a mortgage broker, a financial advisor, an estate planning attorney, right? Now you got to do the, would you mind if I, there's a lot of people that let's just say you want to be a better person. They want to grow personally. It's like, it's always a recommended tip to get permission, but that's not tonight's tip. Tonight's tip is about questions. And the more questions that you've got, questions can help you when you're asked something that people don't have your permission to ask them, right? Questions can help you avoid offending somebody. You know what I'm saying? Questions can communicate your pure intent. Questions can help you build the rapport. All of that, absolutely.
So by building the rapport leads up, in as much as your intention is to get the information, and you have now pre-scripted or calibrated your questions, when you put them across at some point, and as Patty has pointed out, yes, like what makes you ask me that? Mm-hmm. Your answer to that will be calibrated with your active listening, observing the non-verbal word as well. You can then say, is this person really offended by that question? You can then swing back and frame it again. Is there anything that you are uncomfortable with me asking you? And then that will also lead you up to.
I don't know. I'm just telling you, I don't like that question. I don't know what it is. I don't know where you're going with this, Charlie. I'm just telling you, I don't like that question. Is there anything you're uncomfortable with me asking you? I could see instances where that might be effective. I just personally don't like it. I don't like the question.
Or is there anything that you
it's like, to me, it's like saying yes while you're shaking your head like this. In other words, like, you're like letting them know, hey, I'm not going to ask you about something that you don't want to ask about. So tell me what you don't want me to ask you about. To me, there's elements of that question that cancel each other out.
Yeah. Again, not going down the rabbit hole of the permission and the type of questions you're asking. This builds up on the rapport that you've built. What is your intention? What information are you looking for? How can you add value to that person? That is all basically where it gets framed around. And how are you listening to what the other person is saying? How are you bringing all your senses to it and paying attention to what they are saying? An example is, for me, if I was listening attentively to what you are wanting, to be connected to somebody, whether it's an investment, a funder, a partner, etc., there's maybe one question that I'm going to need to ask you, something like, what will the return of investment be? How much are you bringing to the party? What's your skin in the game? That might be a question that at the time might not be the right time to ask that question.
Yeah, but you wouldn't need them to tell you, would you? You would know, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
For example, if somebody is developing something and they need an investor, one of the questions is, how much do you need? The next question would be, what equity are you giving up for that amount of money that you are needing that investment for?
Yeah.
What are you bringing to the game? What's your skin in the game? What's the ROI, etc.? So there's certain stages where
I still don't, in that context, I still don't see where it would help you at all to say, is there any questions you're uncomfortable with me asking?
And so I'm saying, maybe the example in that one was not really befitting, but it's a build-up. It's a build-up to where you can now read, oh, this guy is feeling a little bit uncomfortable with me asking, how much money are you putting in? He doesn't want to really disclose it at that stage.
Yeah, there's a chance that I don't understand what you're either saying or asking. There's a chance that I don't understand. Like, and that happens a lot, Charlie. So I'm listening carefully, and I don't know if you're saying something or if you're asking me something. Like, I always try to seek that clarity. So are you making a statement?
Or making a statement more. I'm making a statement more to says, in some situations, having to get the permission to ask a question will build itself up. And as Amy had said, there's that listening part, the non-verbal communication. And then maybe this is what I tend to, where you don't get you to understand. I tie in a whole lot of nuggets, little tips from each tip and bring them together and says, if you brought all this together, you will get to where you want to get. Where do you come to ask for permission? Do you actually need permission? What would lead you up to ask for permission?
Yeah, like my response to that so far is that permission usually, and I'm hesitant to say only, but I'll say it for now, only comes up for me when I'm trying to do my business, when I'm coaching. Now, I do think that, when it comes up interpersonally, it usually doesn't go well. So, hey, can I ask you something? And then what?
Yeah.
Follow, right? Rather than just asking. Okay. When I'm coaching, I want permission. I go out of my way to get it. And I teach people in my coaches training how to get permission to ask the questions that we need to ask. Right. In the context of networking, it's different. In networking, I'd never ask permission to ask questions.
It will just flow. It's like,
it flows. Right.
Yeah.
And for Patty's comment, sometimes she says she's been asked questions that she doesn't feel she's given somebody permission, or she feels that they should have permission before they ask, or she's surprised. I mean, you could put it in your own words, Patty, right? So I was having fun with, well, do you have questions to handle those questions? And I was just trying to keep that, and as we found out, it's like, well, what makes you think that you can ask me that, which is a question, but it communicates offense, right? And then you got to decide, like, if somebody ever asks me something that, and I'm a pretty open book, like, you ask me anything you want for the most part, but if somebody ever asks me something that I'm not comfortable talking about, or right, how do I handle that? Sometimes I get offended. Like, what makes you think? It depends on who they are and what the context is. Sometimes I'm surprised. Sometimes it's my kids. We're out in public and there's other adults are around, and the kids will ask you about something that happens at home that doesn't happen out in public, and you get embarrassed. And so it's, again, I don't think we can talk about these things in terms of generalities as much.
It's again,
when we're talking about permission,
context.
we're talking about permission. I just really, I keep coming back to the number one context where permission becomes the most important for me is when I'm coaching, or if somebody's advising, or, it's like, if I'm your realtor, right, I'm going to sit down with you. I don't want to just know what kind of house you want, but I want to ask you some other stuff. Like, why do you want a house? How long do you want to stay in this house? What's going on about the old house? I'm going to say, hey, can I ask you if you ever had any fights in that old house? Can I ask you where you threw up in that hole? Can I ask you? I still don't know if it doesn't make sense to me that I would ever say, is there anything you're uncomfortable with me asking you? Right. So I just want to make sure, like, I don't know if you're doing that, but I would immediately be uncomfortable with you asking me anything after that.
Mm-hmm. So again, as we said, it's again, what is the context? Is it a networking event? Is it coaching?
It's different. It's different.
Yeah, it's different.
It's different to say before I introduce you to any deals, I'm going to need to know how honest you are and how accurate you are with the numbers. There's all kinds of questions associated with putting deals together. Are you ready to be open about those questions? I can see you asking that.
Yeah.
But you're not. Yeah.
But now that would go like, oh, are you thinking that I'm hiding something? It's, again, it's context, what is expected, what is appropriate, and what would be more effective. That's where it comes
context determines what's effective, expected, and appropriate. And not all of those three have to sync up.
Yes.
What is unexpected and inappropriate is what's most effective.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right? And we can come up with examples there. Let me quickly just say hello to Lillian Padilla, who's watching on the Facebook side live. How are you? We're in Get a Clue in 52. This is tip number 4 for the year, and tip number 4 in the communication section. We have 5 sections of the book, each with 10 tips. Marketing has 2 extra tips, which gave me a full year's worth. This is the second edition of the book. We did this dance every Sunday last year in the first edition of the book. So I've been doing this 56 consecutive weeks now. And this year I just decided to mix it up. Last year I went on Zoom and live streamed into the Facebook group. This year I'm going on Zoom and live streaming into my YouTube channel. But last week and this week, I'm going live on Facebook to maybe let the algorithms of Facebook let more people know that I'm doing this. See if we can get more people to join on the Zoom side to make the conversations and the dialogue, the interaction a little bit more dynamic and robust. As I got Charlie from South Africa and Patty from Chicago joining me every week. And every now and then there's some others that join here and there, like Todd in Northern California, and who else on the East Coast? Sometimes people come in.
There's Brandon, there's
Big Mike and Brandon on the East Coast. Yeah. Sometimes we get other people jumping in and out, but the more the merrier, right? So I thought, let's tickle the Facebook algorithms and see how many people it alerts. Hey, Jeff Klubeck is live, and maybe you come on board and say hello. And it's great to see you, Lillian. And if you ever want to come on the Zoom side, it's just tinyurl.com/get-a-clue. That's it. And look, there's no makeup, no mirrors, no smoke, no lights, no nothing. It's not an executive production or elaborate anything. It's just show up, hang out on a Sunday night. Bing me, my man, my roommate from the dorms, Chris, is jumping in. Hello, Chris. I love you, brother. It's good to see you coming on board for an installment of Get a Clue in 52. To you again, I'll say, if you ever want to come in on the Zoom side, it's just tinyurl.com/get-a-clue. Chris, you'd be so wonderful, colorful to have on the Zoom side, because you have all these stories about living in the dorms with me at San Diego State. That's a friend for a life right there. My man, Chris, it's good to see you. And so many people coming in from that I know from high school, and whether you're coming from the I coaching and consulting community, or old friends from Secret Knock, or high school, or Get a Clue, my community, or Wolf Management Consultants, or Workplace Training Network, any of the different communities that you maybe coming in through. Thank you so much for being here. We might get Chris jumping in on board. He says he's coming on the Zoom side. Let's see what happens. tinyurl.com/get-a-clue. But that's what we're doing every Sunday night. We're Zooming. Get a clue in 52. Tonight was tip number 4 in the communication section. And the tip is to ask questions. And then I elaborate beyond that. Master asking questions. Get really, 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 really good at questions. Understand questions as a better option than statements. Understand questions as a strategy to help you be smarter when you speak, because when you ask questions, you have more to listen to, and it's like doing research and figuring out how to speak directly to the listening. So many people just talk themselves away from relationships and opportunities, and they're talking about things that they haven't found out if anybody gives a rat's ass about. That's what I'm getting at. The more questions we ask, the more we have to listen to, and then we're smarter when we speak, because we're speaking to the listening. We're speaking to the interests that we've discovered through listening to answers to the questions that we've asked. So it's a circle. It goes round and round and round. And here we are, 9:05 p.m. Wow. For the 4th installment this year out of the 2nd edition of the book, Get a Clue in 52. Chris said he was coming on board. I'll give him a couple more minutes. I've got the gallery view on, so if he was here, I'd see him. And otherwise, I'll throw out last call. Patty, Charlie, any other comments, questions, offerings, understandings, anecdotes, jokes, case studies, expressions, anything like that before we wrap up this week's installment of Get a Clue in 52?
Then thank you once again. You owe me another Kluby snack for last week. So I need 2 Kluby snacks.
One last week?
Unfortunately, I couldn't make it last week because
no, I don't owe you one. You owe me one then. Here we go. Here we go. I'm ready for you this week, Charlie. Are you ready?
Yeah.
By the way, for those of you watching on the Facebook side or the YouTube side, you got to understand, every week Charlie asks me for a Kluby snack. And a Kluby snack is either my wife's homemade cookies, which are delicious, by the way. There's Kluby Snack 1.0 and 2.0, different variations, unreal. Don't ask me for the recipe because she'll kill me. It's just a no-go, no recipe. Don't do it. But anyway, it's either my wife's homemade cookies, which are amazing. If you had them, you know, Kluby Snacks, or it's one of my phrases, one of my slogans, or one of my sayings that I come up with, that I try to take, a concept or a platitude or an idea or a thought provoker and boil it down into something that's catchphrasy, that's memorable, a digestible nugget that kind of gets you thinking, if you will. Maybe has a little humor laced in, but a little wit. And this is what people have told me. This is not the way I self-describe, because I'm more humble than that. But anyway, if you want, by the way, I'll say this, if you want to get access to 12 Kluby Snacks, 12 Kluby Snack videos, go to www.theklubrary. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. The Klubrary, Klubrary, theklubrary.com. And there's 12 Kluby Snack videos just for free waiting for you. Just become a member. It's totally free. Just give us the email address, create your login. Then you'll be able to get 12 Kluby Snack videos. And I hope that you do that. And I hope that you give me some feedback on them and tell me what you think. I'm coming up with more Kluby Snacks all the time, but I've shot 12 Kluby Snack videos that are available for you on the Klubrary. There's other stuff waiting for you on the Klubrary as well. You could become an affiliate. You could take some of my 4-pay courses. There's free stuff and there's some 4-pay stuff. Very affordable, like $19, $97, etc. But if you want 12 free Kluby Snack videos, go to the Klubrary.com. Charlie, this is the one that I got for you tonight. Let me thank Patty, because it came up in real time. Patty and I were on a call earlier in the week, and this came up in real time, and we captured it. And it goes a little something like this. Are you ready? Here's tonight's Kluby Snack for you, Charlie. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Accountability coaching is the objectivity of productivity. Yes, sir. I'll say it again because you're writing it down. What a great note taker you are, Charlie. Love you so much, man. Ready? Accountability coaching is the objectivity of productivity. Awesome. All right. And I'm not going to elaborate on it. I I don't have to elaborate on these Klubi snacks. I just have to be ready to give you one, right? So thank you for already prodding me on that. And hopefully, if you want to know more about what that Klubi snack is all about, if you want to know more about my coaching and leadership training, if you want to know more about the Kluberry, if you want to know more about group mentoring, if you want to know more about anyway, just keep on paying attention. Juan, I see you out there. Thanks for jumping in. Juan is a former student of mine, I think from San Diego City College, many moons ago. At this point, I'm coming up on my 4th consecutive year of retirement. I'm actually retired adjunct professor of communication now. I am just helping people grow personally and professionally in addition to just the communication skills. But I see you out there, Juan. Hello. We're doing Get a Klu in 52. Every Sunday night, I come on to Zoom to read one tip from my book, Get a Klu in 52. Last year, I live streamed these into my Facebook group. This year, I'm live streaming into YouTube channel, Watch Get a Klu, all one word. And last week and this week, I've started to go live as well. And that's having some more people come on board than may have otherwise. So I dig that. If you want to join the conversation, if you want to network with other people, if you want to be heard, if you have something to say about the tips that I'm reading, then join on the Zoom site every week, www.tinyurl/getaklu, GETAKLU. Oh, having said that, let me go ahead and make one more last call. Let's do that again. Last call for content, contributions, questions, summaries, statements, jokes, metaphors. You got your Klubi snack already, Charlie. I got you. Anything else from you guys, Charlie, Patty? Anything else on the Zoom side? I'm just making one last look on the Facebook side to see if I see.
I'm chewing on my Klubi snack right now.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm ready.
Bite-sized and digestible.
Yep.
By the way,
and I'm chewing on it right now.
Yeah, bite-sized and digestible. Wonderful. All right. Well, that's it. What a fun night. Thanks to everybody. I'm going to go ahead and rattle them off if I can. Juan and Chris and Lillian, Joni and Amy and Zach and Amy again. No, Nancy and James. Thank you. And whoever else that's joined on the Facebook side. I don't know if you've, even if you didn't type in a comment, thank you. Charlie, Patty, thank you. And I love you guys. It's wonderful fun to do this. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Ready to seal it with a kiss, Patty? Yeah. We're going to the Facebook side first. Mwah. And now we're coming to the Zoom side. Mwah. All right. Good night, everyone. I love you.